This is an effort by your government to keep you safe by collecting information. That's all we're doing. We're collecting information. Do you plan to stay here? If so, where do you plan to stay? Have you tested positive?
Each driver will be greeted by a member of the Rhode Island National Guard and will be asked to provide their destination.
Signs now directing out-of-state motorists and Amtrak travelers to National Guard checkpoints in Rhode Island. Anyone from anywhere else in the country has to give their personal information so the state can ensure that they follow a mandatory 14-day quarantine with very few exceptions. States are also taking different approaches to what kinds of businesses each deems essential. Gun stores, marijuana dispensaries, abortion clinics, and houses of worship. Let's debate with Democratic strategist Kevin Walling, Trump 2020 senior legal advisor Jenna Ellis, and Fox News contributor Benson. Good to have you all with us. We're going to start with this case. A couple of states, Texas and Ohio, had both said, listen, we need every bit of medical personnel, medical equipment. We're not going to have abortions right now unless they're to save someone's life. We don't consider them to be essential. And it went straight to court, and they won. Actually, a federal judge has sided with Planned Parenthood and the other abortion clinics that were suing. The president, acting president and CEO of Planned Parenthood tonight, saying exploiting a global pandemic to ban abortion is illegal. Anti-abortion activists have tried to exploit fear of the COVID-19 pandemic to push a dangerous political agenda. Enough is enough. And Guy, tonight the judge agreed with them.
Look, I think that a lot of Americans probably look at this controversy and wonder, should we be debating about abortion at a time like this? I'll just say that I find it sad at a moment where we are unifying to try to save every life. We have some people pushing very hard to end lives. And to me, that's unfortunate. I think it's tragic. I think there are probably and certainly constitutional issues at play here. But we have heard from governors across the country that non-essential procedures, elective procedures, be postponed. I understand there's a ticking clock with a pregnancy, but that's because there's a human life growing inside of a womb. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to talk about and think about within this context, but most abortions are elective. Thorny questions here.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we get to all of these different businesses. So I want to get to churches as well, because Mayor de Blasio in New York said not only, listen, we're going to give houses of worship a warning. If they have any kind of meeting and they don't listen to our warning, we will go the next step. He said that he would threaten them with fines and maybe permanent closure of the houses of worship. The Washington Examiner, writing on this, says the threat of permanent closure is so clearly unconstitutional that it's a wonder de Blasio even suggested it. He certainly cannot use the suspension of constitutional rights later as punishment for non-compliance now. Jenna, that would be a very long-term penalty.
Yes, it would. And, you know, Shannon, all of these questions are really pointing Americans back to why we have the U.S. Constitution that provides the principles of constitutional law to begin with. And so we have to recognize first that President Trump is doing an absolutely wonderful, extraordinary, exemplary job in the federal government's obligation here, which is to provide the resources and support to states so that they can make the decisions for their specific communities. And he's absolutely doing that. So when we look at each of these types of orders, these are each of the state level governors that are taking specific action in their state. And so let's remember that the Constitution here provides, and you know, the American attorneys have been arguing over these types of fundamental liberty issues since 1803. Our founding fathers at the Constitutional Convention argued about first the government being enabled to control the governed, but then secondly obliged to control itself. Madison actually said that in Federalist 51. So we have fundamental individual rights that are not absolute that then are abutted against the government being able to control the health, safety, and welfare of its community via the 10th Amendment. And so we see that states do have some limited authority. So the constitutional analysis here is that does the government have a compelling state interest, and are they furthering and advancing that interest narrowly tailored by the least restrictive means? So for churches specifically, and any other fundamental right, the government does have a compelling state interest here to protect the health, safety, and welfare. But they have to do that narrowly tailored by the least restrictive means. To continue this into perpetuity is unconstitutional, and definitely if they're doing things like restricting online services, that wouldn't be the least restrictive means. So I just want to reassure Americans real quick, Shannon. Yeah, I just want to reassure Americans, this may be an unprecedented situation, but we're not without principles here and constitutional analysis.
That's true. All right, Kevin, I want to bring you in because there are some states that have ruled that marijuana dispensaries are essential. A lot of people may feel that way right now. But there's also this issue about gun shops and whether or not, because there has been a flood of people that going in to get guns, ammo, whatever. Washington Times says the Second Amendment, which guarantees private gun ownership as a constitutional right in the U.S., also extends protections to commercial gun sellers. That's according to a pronouncement by the Department of Homeland Security this weekend. Your take, Kevin.
Yeah, I think, Shannon, the Supreme Court is going to be very busy, I think, on all these different fronts when it convenes again, these different kind of questions on constitutionality with regards to abortion, gun control. Of course, in the Heller decision, which was one of the most important, I think, decisions handed down by the Supreme Court when it comes to gun violence, gun control policies, they said that there is not, actually Scalia wrote in that decision, that there is not a universal right to bear arms, that there can be limits placed on government. Now, they have to be reasonable, and it's any guess whether these restrictions, as we're seeing in California with Governor Newsom, are reasonable. Again, to the abortion question with Guy, though, I mean, I think, as he said, there is a timeline for women in terms of accessing abortion. Not so much that argument can be made, I think, with purchasing guns.
Well, and the Texas AG has said they're going to appeal the decision that was against their policy tonight. So as we all predict, there will be much litigation over all these things. In the meantime, Kevin, Jenna, and Guy, great to have all of you with us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, we are not saying goodnight until we give you some very good news next.